All right, y'all, what's happening? Dustin and I are still chilling in the back of my Subaru at the beach in Carlsbad. But really, we wanted to dive in and kind of peel the first layer or two of what's the dual fuel diet. Like, how far back does this go? What's the origin of this whole idea of getting into a native zone?
So actually, this starts when the creation of man. This is how we were created by God.
Jesus time, huh?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Even before Jesus, go back even further. So, basically, we spent most of our existence in a state of ketosis, most often in a state of starvation, and our body's been supplied by ketones for a long time, which allows us to function. It allowed us to hunt very well.
Kind of the hunter-gatherer period.
Absolutely. And then we progressed into the last 100 years. The ketogenic diet was actually designed for kids that had epilepsy, and if they had a state of ketones in their brain, it prevented them from having seizures. And then slowly we kind of progressed away from that after World War II, and then we got into trouble.
So there's a thing called the 7-country study. So you've looked it up, I've read it.
Sure.
I wish I had the Time magazine. Let's pretend this is the Time magazine. There's an article, a front cover article in the 50s or 60s. A guy named Ansel Key from the University of Minnesota did a study, and he hypothesized 30-something countries. He hypothesized that if you ate a lot of fat, you'd get heart disease and you'd die. It clogged all your arteries. All this kind of cholesterol conversation came up, and he published his studies. They called it the 6 or 7. I think it's a 7-country study. Right around the 50s and 60s, Time magazine ran this article, and they basically printed it as gospel. Problem is, today we've come to realize that it was all based on BS. It was based on misinformation and a hypothesis that was inaccurate. The 30 countries he studied, only 7 of them fit his numbers, so he kind of sort of scrubbed out all the other 23 or so countries, the ones that people eat a lot of fat and they don't die, a lot of coconut oil or coconuts and things, and he left out the countries where they don't eat any fat or little amounts of fat and they still die of heart disease. And he just left the ones where they ate fat and died, which America is, of course, part of.
Sure.
Time magazine ran this article, and shortly thereafter, the war on fat got started. The creation of sugars in our foods really went through the roof. Fast food came out, and low fat, no fat, reduced fat products like butters and dressings, and all these products came out. And what happened to America?
We got fat.
We got fat.
Heart disease. Everything's going up. Our health in our country. Look around. It's obviously not doing very well.
The war on fat goes nuts. People stopped eating fat, and our fatness in our bodies went up. Yeah. How does that make any sense?
Yeah, well, it makes a lot of sense now that we understand it.
It does to you and I too.
Yeah.
So then you had this whole movement into like Atkins and stuff. I mean, you're familiar with that.
Very, very well. So Atkins, I would say very brilliant man. He, Dr. Atkins, he's done some amazing things. A lot of people know the Atkins diet, which is a base ketogenic diet. Unfortunately, about Atkins diet, it often would push protein a little high,
right?
And it didn't make it sustainable enough. And I think the biggest reason why it did that is because fat had such a bad rap,
right?
And so we lost that connection to make it sustainable. Where the ketogenic diet, the dual fuel diet, has a lot more sustainability, especially if you add our product to it.
It's higher in fat, lower in protein.
Exactly.
A lot of people will associate this conversation like a high fat, low carb diet to Atkins, and a lot of people had challenges with their kidneys and things like that. Because of the too high of protein. What can happen, and I know a lot of the fitness people are going to watch this and they already eat way too much protein as it is. Maybe since we're on it, kind of chat a little bit of where some of that went wrong and where people go wrong in thinking they need to eat tons of protein.
Well, I think it stemmed right away from the Atkins diet, and then the fear of fat is that people were always like more protein, more protein, more protein. So when I was competing and training hard and coaching high level athletes, we always drove their protein levels up. I'd bring them up nice and high, anywhere from 1 gram to 2 grams per pound of body weight, and then that's a lot of protein. But ultimately, if they weren't metabolizing it properly, it was just breaking down into sugar, and they might as well have just ate a Snickers bar instead of eating the protein, because they would have given the same result for most people. But now, if you're not training like an athlete, then you don't need that much protein, and even a lot of athletes don't need that much.
Right.
And so it's really finding that ideal amount, which can be anywhere from a half a gram per pound of body weight to 1.5 to some people may need 2, but that's an extreme case.
Right. So really, this whole dual fuel diet, the origins go back a long time. Again, keep in mind kind of the paleo man. Think of your human body like an automobile. There's a couple cars down. There's a Toyota Prius hybrid, which has got a gasoline engine in it, and it's got an electric motor in it. Basically, you can plug in and charge it in your house. The human body works in, you have to run out of gasoline before the electric motor will turn on. your body will produce ketones naturally, but
Absolutely.
you got to run it out of glucose. I mean, you got to run it straight out of glucose, and then bam, your ketone producer will kick in. But the cool thing about what we can do with our product is we can give you the benefits of ketones. I just love it. We can give you the benefits of ketones and glucose at the same time, almost like your gasoline and your electric motor running at the same time. And that's the first time in history we've been able to do that.
Absolutely.
Because there's all these things out there, Atkins, paleo, I mean, a million different kind of diets that people follow. But generally, we're just trying to get people back, and we're doing a heck of a job at it, back to their most native way that God created your body to operate, which was a dual fuel.
Yeah. And which is without starvation.
Correct.
And that's important. It's like we're not asking you to fast. We're not asking you to starve. And people, you brought up paleo, and that's a good point here. Is paleo and has been on the craze for a little while now, and I was big into paleo for a while back, but I always knew there's something missing in that. And I truly believe the biggest issue is that they're not starving themselves.
Right.
So if they're going to be paleo, you got to starve, or eat some brain, or at least do some organ meat or something, right? So, but I think the ketogenic diet to me is, and the dual fuel diet is a true paleo diet.
Right.
It's a way to get the benefits of starvation without starving, but also eat clean like a paleo
True.
man did. And I think you get the benefits of the dual fuel that way, especially in conjunction with our product.
That's smart. Let's real quick. 1 minute worth of what does this entail? Ratios, fat, protein, carbs, ratios, numbers, maybe a little wiggle room in there if they're working out.
Okay, perfect.
Or increases in proteins or decreases if they're not, and then just some like the short list of things you eat or things I eat or things they might want to eat.
Perfect. All right, so really quick, at the end of the day, if you need to lose a lot of weight or you struggle with weight, lower your carbs is really key. The fatter you are, most likely the less you need to feel good.
So that's the first thing you want to do is lower carbs.
Those carbs. Yeah, so we're looking at anywhere from 20 grams a day up to, and that's net carbs. Net carbs is basically your carbohydrates minus your fiber. So if you have 10 grams of fiber and you eat 30 carbs, it's 20 net carbs.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about carbs. And it can go all the way up to almost 70 grams of carbs for some people.
Right.
Now, basically, the rule is the skinnier you are, the better off you're doing. You're more towards 70. The fatter you are, the more you're likely to be towards 20.
Right.
And once you get to your goal, then you can play around with that a little bit. As for protein, I like to start people off with about 0.5 grams per body weight up to 0.8 grams per body weight. That's about where I like to see people start. Now, once again, that can wiggle. Depends on your activity levels.
Right.
If you're more active, you're more fit, you may have to push it up to 1.2. The less active you are, the more you can stay around that 0.5 to 0.8. And then the last part of this is increasing your dietary fats. So as a percentage, from a caloric intake perspective, people starting out, I'd like to say, I'd like them to start between 60% of their diet fat and move it up to 75 to 80%,
right.
Calorically. And then the carbohydrates is usually between 5% and 7%, and then the protein's the rest.
Right.
So that's kind of the wiggle room I like to start with. And the more superhuman you want to become, the more you push that fat up a little higher,
right.
and then keep the carbs down a little bit.
And one thing that I had to learn is fats without increasing fat without the reduction of carbs and sugar, not very intelligent.
Not a good idea.
So in other words, the first thing you said is reduce your carbs, then increase your fats.
Absolutely.
Just increasing fats,
it's going to be bad.
It's going to be no bueno.
Yep.
So you've got to reduce the carbs first at the same time, like tweak the numbers at the same time. And I didn't even know what was a fat or a carb or I mean, honestly, I didn't know.
Yeah. And so, the most common carbs that people realize are breads and pastas and things like that. That's like the most common ones. But the things that get hidden in people that they don't realize is your sodas.
Yogurts, milk, orange juice.
Yeah, a lot of your fruit juices are really high in carbohydrates. At any given time, you only have about 2 teaspoons of glucose, which is table sugar, basically in your blood, and that's not very much. I mean, easy a glass of sugar, a glass of orange juice would exceed that.
Right.
So, at the end of the day, I'd rather use the orange, but even for some people, an orange is maybe too much right now.
Right.
To get them under their body in control, so that we can strategically add
right.
those things back.
And then just a handful of things, like if somebody was going to say, okay, what would be a couple of things that I might do? Maybe they're starting off in those 3 phases we gave them. Maybe they're just getting started. What's maybe the first thing they might do to start, merging their, like moving in this direction? Maybe what's the first or second or third thing they might get rid of or reduce? And then the first or second thing they might add in, like specific foods.
Oh, a couple things is that if you're on our product, which I hope all of you will be, because it's the key to make this easy. Honestly, why make it so damn hard? It's so much easier this way. So if you're on the product, you're going to reduce those carb cravings. So that's the first step, is start to eliminate the crap that you don't need. The obvious stuff, the extra bagel.
No more Haagen-Dazs?
Yeah, the ice cream. Those things that are just kind of obvious. So let's just start getting rid of those. And then really start to take a look at your whole grains, your oats. Those things will get you in trouble. First off, they're hard to digest anyway. So second off is that they cause a lot of blood sugar instability. So let's start getting rid of those things, and then slowly we can start increasing protein if you need to. Otherwise, I may have to reduce protein if you're over exceeding. And then I want you to start looking at introducing some healthy fats. Number one healthy fat to bring in is start cooking with coconut oil. Saute your vegetables, your heavy greens, your spinach,
broccoli.
Yeah, asparagus. You look at your low carb vegetables, which we'll have a list below, and start using those as, and start sauteing your vegetables in good healthy oils. Olive oil is good oil. I like that cold. I don't like to cook with it. I'd rather cook with things like avocado oil, coconut oil, and red palm oil, things like that, or butter.
Organic grass-fed butter, baby.
Yeah. We could talk about the morning coffee,
Definitely.
morning tea. Go ahead, you hit that one.
I was so it's funny. I inched into this. It took me about 3 weeks to learn how food worked. I knew how to eat food, but I was a Stouffer's macaroni and cheese eater, and a Freschetta frozen pizza eater. That's the stuff I like to eat. I mean, you would never fathom eating that stuff, but
when I was like 12,
hundreds of grams of carbs in those items. I mean, just no idea. So when I first got started, it took me a little bit to get used to it. And one of the first things that you had said is, do you drink coffee? Do you drink tea? I said no. I'd never had either one of them. And one of the best ways to start your day is with the consumption of a pretty good size amount of healthy fats. So we call it native tea, or fat tea, or butter coffee. There's a few ways to refer to it as. But you brew a cup of coffee, you put it in the blender, you take a hunk of organic grass-fed butter. You might start with a tablespoon or a half a teaspoon, or it just depends on the person. Today I do 2 tablespoons of Kerrygold unsalted pure Irish butter, throw it in my coffee, and a couple tablespoons of MCT oil. You may start with a half a tablespoon and work your way up. Maybe some organic heavy cream if you're doing dairy. Put a little bit of that in there. I do that. You may start with one of those ingredients, but at the end of the day, you just want to put fat in your coffee or your tea, healthy fats instead of sugars. Most people put sugars in their coffee, which is the worst thing you could do.
Absolutely.
So first thing in the morning, bam, let's get some glucose in our system. So what we want to talk about how to do is put fat in your coffee, put fat in your system. So whether it's coffee, tea, decaf, doesn't matter. And it's just a way. I use liquid stevia to sweeten it to make it palatable for me. And man, that stuff zings me for a good handful of hours first thing in the morning. I have a high-fat, low-carb, snacky lunch. I drink our product at 2 or 3, and then I have, a fatty meat with green veggies, some butter, some coconut oil on those, and that's my dinner, and that's my whole day.
Absolutely.
So
And that's a good point. I love the native coffee, the native tea. I do it every morning also. I do mine a little different. I actually eat my breakfast. And then I have mine around 9, 10, and I take mine for the rest of the day. That's what I like.
You get up earlier than me.
I do. I get up really early, and so I like my product a little bit later in the day.
Yeah.
And so there's different strategies of how to utilize that, and there's different snacks. Like you said, if your people are having dairy, cheese can be a great little snack. Salamis, pick your healthiest kinds that you can find that have no sugar in it, and start getting away from that idea of not eating or that fat's bad. That's just going to get you in trouble. And then people also say like, well, I'm not hungry. What do I do if I'm not hungry? I'm not eating enough calories. And a couple things can happen with that is that we don't want to go with low deprivation calories for a long period of time.
Right.
So you're going to feel you're not going to be as hungry. You're not going to crave as many things. And so that's when fat bombs can come in. And I know that's kind of scary for people, but even if you're not hungry and your caloric intake's a little bit low, I'd like to see you kind of drive up that fat intake to keep yourself in ketosis, keep yourself satisfied, and maintain that. And that's a great plateau buster for people.
Yeah, for sure. And look, this is just an introduction to it.
Absolutely.
We'll continue to make videos to just address questions and create clarity, give people confidence. But, one of the main things is manage your expectations, stay excited, just realize it's a journey, it's not a sprint, and just have a blast with it. That's the stuff that you told me when I first started. So that's awesome.
Yeah, be patient. Enjoy it, embrace it, educate yourself.